You're right, guys. Welcome to the latest episode of Owl Talks. And we just thought we'd do a real quick episode, myself and John Hasty, because there was a piece of news that we were looking at. John was posting around DMD Pathfinders, guys, and yeah, we thought it would be worth just a bit of a quick discussion.
Yeah, so the story is basically about celebrating the case of an adult with DMD who's lived into his 50s with non-invasive ventilation. And yeah, it's just something that's a really good, positive story that kind of chimes with everything that DMD Pathfinders is about and all that we're trying to raise awareness of as well. So for us, it's not really a surprise. I mean, we know several cases within our community of people who are living into their 50s, either with invasive ventilation through tracheostomy or through non-invasive ventilation increasingly, although that seems to be less common. I think that's more to do with the historic choices of how people have been ventilated, I think.
Yeah, so if we talk about the two different types of ventilation here that people obviously start using through their 20s and 30s and onwards, invasive ventilation and non-invasive ventilation for boys and men with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, as well as many other types of dystrophy. What are the differences between the two for people who don't know?
Yeah, so non-invasive ventilation just means the kind of ventilation that I'm using at the moment. So it can be a mouthpiece like I'm using, or it can be a mask that goes over your face. But the point is, it doesn't involve any kind of surgical procedure. It doesn't involve any artificial openings being created in your body, basically. So in contrast, invasive ventilation would be a tracheostomy. So that's where a hole is put in the neck and a tube directly put down into the trachea. So there's those two different options. I mean, usually people start on non-invasive ventilation when, at least with Duchenne, when they start to experience difficulty overnight, and they'll start off with a mask, and then as they go to 24-hour ventilation, or in some countries, it's sooner than that, they'll actually opt to do tracheostomy. So I think in this country, for the most part, I think we tend to favor non-invasive ventilation, and we'll only use tracheostomies when the non-invasive option isn't working, or when people go into hospital and they need more support around suctioning and that kind of thing. Whereas other countries, for example, Denmark, then people will be routinely given a tracheostomy, even slightly before they need it 24 hours a day. So to some extent, it's a medical choice as to what to do. But I think what this article importantly shows is that whatever the mode of ventilation, then living into your 50s is something that's possible for adults with Duchenne.
Yeah, I think that's the key point of the article. And, I think what's key here to remember is that whilst we're pushing for cures and treatments all the time, genetic treatments and drugs, I think it's important to realize that people are living to their 50s, on their own, almost, oftentimes without having ever taken any types of drugs whatsoever for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And it's things like this, invasive ventilation or non-invasive ventilation, that have really helped them.
Yeah, I mean, I would point out that it's not no medication whatsoever. So, for example, there's important drugs for treating cardiac dysfunction and protecting the heart. So it is important that people do have access to those. I think we do understand that not everybody, unfortunately, can live this long, and often with Duchenne, there's variation in how the heart is affected. So for some people, where the heart can be affected quite aggressively at an early age, and that can unfortunately still lead to people dying earlier. So I think it's clear that we do need to understand better why there's variation in cardiac involvement in Duchenne, and there's more need to actually try and tackle that with different treatments. But yeah, the important thing is that it is possible for people to live longer. It might not happen in every case, and people may still be dying earlier, but the potential is there, and we don't always know whether someone's going to live longer or not. I think for me, that suggests we need to change the narrative here. We need to stop talking about Duchenne as being this death sentence, as being this tragic condition that people won't live past childhood. I think some people are still using that language and discussing about the condition in that way. And it's just really unhelpful, because it's not helping young people with Duchenne to actually prepare for adult life. Writing off the chance of that happening is leaving people completely ill-equipped, and they end up not actually really enjoying adulthood at all because they haven't been prepared for it. I think for some, there's a bit of a worry that if we start admitting that actually people can live like good lives with Duchenne and they can live into their 50s, then suddenly that takes the urgency away from finding a cure. But for me, from a health economy perspective, and the costs of care for people with Duchenne, I think actually the fact that people are living longer makes it even more imperative to find a cure, because as a society, we can't afford to support more and more people. We need to be actually treating this condition and preventing the worst effects of it, really, if we're going to have a health system that works. So I think there's just as much urgency to find a cure. Just because people are living longer, they're still facing the same level of muscle deterioration. So I think it's wrong to worry that it makes it less urgent. I think, we need to see Duchenne for what it is. All its good and bad points, we need to see that people can have good qualities of life, and they can be happy in adulthood, but equally, there's all the difficult stuff that has to be dealt with. The muscle wasting and the really debilitating negative impacts it can have on people. So we've just got to be honest about it, I think.
Yeah, I thought one of the key things there when in the article where it said it was one of the first times that some studies had been done that had shown or seen someone living into their 50s with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And I kind of think, well, you say quite a few, and I could couple, and that really sort of makes me think, are we starting to give scientific research a chance for adults with Duchenne muscular dystrophy? Are adults, living into their 50s, are they finally being heard by the scientific community?
Yeah, I think there's always a bit of a delay sometimes with scientific research actually catching up to new developments, I think, and actually kind of accepting the reality. But I think still the whole medical and research community is so focused on Duchenne being a childhood disease that they just simply cannot see past that barrier, really. So I think it's great that this is being highlighted, absolutely, but I think there's much more that needs to be done in terms of understanding adults with Duchenne and research, and actually in the future, potential treatment. And I think, as I mentioned about improving cardiac treatment, that's really important that happens.
Yeah. So you guys are going to be posting more about this over the coming days and through next week. And yeah, let's keep talking about this and talking too about the importance of ventilation too, because I know that often doesn't get seen for the value that it really brings. Yeah. Perhaps even an episode on invasive ventilation versus non-invasive ventilation,
definitely.
And all the other things like that. Brilliant. Thanks, John. And thanks for watching. And we'll see you all again soon.
Cheers. All right. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.